I am swinging from a 7-story window, throwing parties in a 10 by 7 cell. It's astounding the lengths I'll go to convince the whole damn world I don't need anybody's help. Yeah, I am waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. I'll try to use your body as a life raft, 'cause if there's room enough for one, there must be room enough for two. I'll sail the good ship you into the sunset, sipping on savory water till my liver turns blue. Sha-na-na, sha-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Is broadcast in the evening news. I will be relieved. La, 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 I am waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. I'm waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. La, 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 la. Singing, hey, hey, alright, yeah, I wrote that one myself. It's astounding the lengths I'll go to convince the whole damn world I don't need anybody's help. Fuck.
All right, put down your pens, put down your pencils, step away from the keyboards, and settle in for this week's episode of The Writer's Block, a Muddied Waters media production. Thank you to the Narcissist Cookbook for allowing me to use their music, and also to Don and Sally Wright for giving birth to me, because without them, none of this would be possible. And to Stateside Kava for the kava I am drinking on today's episode. To all those above, Bula Vanaka. I am very excited to bring on my next guest. He is quite possibly one of my favorite people in the entire world. Not even quite possible. He is one of my favorite people in the entire world. We first met in Nashville, Tennessee. We bonded over a baseball team and a great... Basically, he's my older brother. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome on a regular activist in the liberty movement, the closest thing to Ron Swanson in the real world. He's the Ron Swanson that you wish real life Ron Swanson actually was. And my spiritual big brother, Brett Corrieri. Brett, thank you so much for coming on, man. I am so happy to have you here.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. It's been too. I should have been on here earlier, but that's probably my fault because I've been, Ron Swansoning, building my own house.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. No, actually, that is 100% my fault because I've always wanted to get you on, but I never wanted to bring you on until I knew I had a good enough quality show that you would be proud to be on my show.
I would be happy to be on your show, even if it was a pile of steaming dog shit.
Well, thank you. Some would argue it still is one of those. So, but yeah. So you and I met when I started working at Mafiosos, which you were my boss. And,
sort of, yeah.
Yeah. And I believe the first words you ever said to me were, "If I catch you eating in this kitchen, I will fire you." I believe that was it. And I was like, man, I don't know who that guy is, but I don't like him. And then...
don't eat my kitchen.
Right. No, I caught that. I caught that was a rule real fast. And then we started talking, and then we eventually got to baseball. I think either you saw my tattoo or one of us was wearing a Red Sox hat. And like from there, we just started bonding more and more and more. And eventually, like, you became one of my favorite people in the entire world and somebody who I look up to and just respect the ever living shit out of. It still is. But So for everything I'm going to say up front, thank you. And I know that later on I'm going to give you like this really long, heartfelt, off the cuff speech that I definitely didn't write down beforehand. I really
Definitely.
didn't. Like, there's nothing on that piece of paper. But yeah, again, thank you for all you've ever done for me, because honestly, you're just the greatest. But so everybody that comes on my show, pretty much everybody that comes on my show, has something to do with the liberty movement. And I don't know if you actually know this or not, but you're a big reason I am a libertarian.
I am glad to hear that. I like to get more people pushing that way.
Yeah. When I first got to Nashville and I started working at Mafiosa's 12 South, I don't remember the address or else I'd plug it for you. But I was
2400 12th Avenue South.
That's it. I was like, I haven't needed to know that in a really long time. 2400 12th Avenue South. We were talking and I just kind of mentioned that I was a libertarian, and you were like, oh, great, me too. And I was like, awesome. And then we started talking more, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm actually a libertarian because I have no idea what he just said. So then I started having to look into everything we would talk about.
What brought that about? What was something that I said that actually made you go, I don't know what he's talking about?
So at the time I was still kind of like, I took one of the what is it? The
world's smallest political quiz.
The Nolan quiz, the Nolan test, Nolan graph, whatever it's called. I took one of those, and it said that I was a libertarian, and I was kind of politically apathetic at the time, but I knew what I believed, and I didn't care what anybody else believed. I have obviously changed in that manner, we were talking one day, and I was like, yeah, I'm a libertarian. And basically at the time, I just wanted to be able to drink as much as I wanted to without being arrested for it. And if I decided to go back to doing drugs, I figured, I don't want to get arrested for that either. And then you started talking to me about immigration and taxes and all of these things. I knew, like immigration, I was like, yeah, whatever. But I saw, at the time, I didn't really see why we should have open borders, or how we have illegal immigration, and I understood why we got illegal immigration. And then as we started talking more about it, I started researching more. I said, this is really stupid. They're paying taxes because they have social security numbers that they got from somebody. So they're paying taxes. They aren't living here scot-free. And then I just started reading more and more into that. And then when it came to taxes, I was like, yeah, but we kind of need something for the defense. And then I started reading more, and I was like, well, no, we don't need that much for defense. No, and we can fund that in other ways. And I just started kind of rolling through it like that, little bit by little bit. And that was during the 2012 election cycle, and Gary Johnson, Mitt Romney, Obama. And I was watching the debates with you. And at the time I was thinking I was going to vote for Mitt Romney, even though in 2008 I did vote for Bob Barr, which I'm not that proud of, but I wasn't voting for McCain or Obama. And we were watching the debates together, and you said, neither one of these guys can hold a candle to Gary Johnson. And so then I started looking into Gary Johnson, and I was like, well, this just makes sense. This is who I'm going to vote for. And that's how... And that was sort of how everything got kicked off. It's just you and me just having regular conversations, and me wondering what it was, why you felt the way that you did. And then I would research it so that way I wouldn't get a completely biased point of view. And as I was researching it, I was like, that makes a lot more sense. And then it just kind of grew from there. And then when I moved here in 2014, I started working for the Libertarian Party. Yep. So
why don't you? How haven't you developed into a full-blown anarchist yet?
So Spike is definitely working on me becoming a full-blown anarchist. He is doing everything he can to get me there, and I'm like a step away. I am just like one tiny little step away. And the one thing that I have some sort of issue with is currency. Like, would we all just use silver? Because if so, cool. Or gold, whatever. Precious metals, Bitcoin, whatever. Like, but what happens if, so here in my area, we've all accepted that we're using silver as our currency. And then I go back to see my friends in Tennessee and they're like, oh no, we don't use silver here. And I'm like, well, fuck. All I have is silver. Like that.
Then somebody sounds like an opportunity to create an exchange.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's where I start getting a little, that's where it starts like muddying the waters a little bit for me on the anarchy. But Spike is definitely attempting to get me all the way there, and slowly it's working. But so, I mean, basically that was kind of how I found myself in libertarianism. But how did you, well, in the liberty movement, how did you get into the liberty movement? Because I remember at one point you had the LP sticker on the back of your car. I don't know if you still do or not.
I don't. I'm more of a small L now.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like any organized religion. That's how I feel about any kind of organized party or politics. I prefer to make my friends and just live my life and be outside of the system as much as I can. But I got started. I grew up. I mean, my mom voted for Ross Perot. I mean, that's the first setup that I remember really paying attention to politics. And it was all about, she was just kind of like, well, screw both of these guys who have been telling us lies forever. I'm going to vote for this other guy, just because it's a third party.
Right.
And when I first voted, and then of course when I was in high school and could first vote senior year, I think that was the Clinton years, and it was, there was the pressure to, for the first couple of years of high school, I was all, screw homeless people. I was more of the Alex, what was that guy's name? Alex, Family Ties guy.
Which guy?
Michael J. Fox character. Michael J.
Oh,
Fox
Alex
character.
P. Keaton.
Guy. Alex P. Keaton. I was more Alex P. Keaton in high school, and I felt like, give me your hate. I will accept it from my teachers. I will take it. Just let it run through me, because it was easier to do that than and I just started to slowly got a little bit molded by some of my more liberal, my Middlebury sociology professor. Just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and eventually I just got tired of fighting, and I would just start accepting it. And I became a little bit liberal in high school, and I didn't realize then that it wasn't a black or white thing. It's not a binary thing. It's not a one or the other. You have to be Republican or you have to be Democrat. It was more along the lines of, now that I know, it's more along the lines of, you could take what you want from each as your feelings and not be pigeonholed in each one of those. I mean, I love it when people like say my brother-in-law doesn't know what I am. If I agree with one thing, if he asks me how I feel on one policy, he thinks he knows me everything else.
Right.
Because I think that if you want a grenade launcher, you should be able to have one. He's like, what's the next step? You need a nuclear weapon? I'm like,
do I need one? No. Do I want one?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We here at Muddied Waters Media support McNukes. We think
that's a sticker seed.
Yeah, we want recreational McNukes to be available to everybody. But yeah, I got into a debate with somebody. It was shortly after the shooting down here in Florida. David Hogg, the one David Hogg wasn't at, but claims he was. And people were going off on gun control, and I got into a debate online, and I said, what weapon I choose to defend my home with has absolutely nothing to do with any of you. Like, if I decide to, use a handgun, or if I decide to use AR or an M16 or whatever, and I don't know a lot about guns, which a lot of people find funny because I'm such an advocate for them. But they're like, one of the guys that was in the debate with me, he said, "You don't even own a gun," and I said, "And yet here I am thinking that you should be allowed to," and then they said, "Okay, so what if it's landmines?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely, I should be allowed to protect my home with landmines. I will
I
be
should be able to set up a tiger trap outside my window.
Right.
If you try to break into my house and you fall into a pit of dirty, sharp spikes that are laced with, I don't care, pick your horrible disease, and you fall into it, that's your wrong place and wrong time. But right now,
yeah,
that's illegal.
I mean, yeah, it's like I was like, I'll be kind enough to put up signs that say landmines on property, but that's just because I don't want you coming on my property at all." And
Yeah.
and that will be enough to make you go, "Wait a minute, maybe we shouldn't walk on this dude's property." Either that, or it's going to make you go, "He's lying," and then you're going to come on the property and find out I wasn't. And then we turned.
Well, you want to hear something crazy?
Yeah.
I spoke on a panel back when Nashville was debating a law to, up until about, I don't remember the exact year, but it was probably before I met you. You couldn't go to a place that served alcohol, even and if you had a concealed carry, you could not carry your weapon inside.
That's a law down here in Florida right now.
They changed the law to be that restaurants could allow it. If they didn't, they could prohibit it. So it was a prescriptive thing. If the law said you could carry it in unless the restaurant said no, or a place that served alcohol. And I went and debated somebody and stood up on this crazy debate with, I forget, somebody from Young Republicans and somebody from Freedom Foundation and somebody from one of those other Koch brother things that I'm a shill for, that I work for on other things too. And they had a ringer in the audience. But my argument was, as a business owner, I think that the private property thing is more important than your right to, I mean, it's my house. If I have a sign on the outside of my house that says you have to wear a green hat and be barefoot when you walk inside my house, who's to stop me? Your choice is to not come into my house.
Right.
And I feel that's the way a restaurant is as well. And because that's my property.
Absolutely.
And I argued that you should be able to outlaw guns in your property, because I've been there many nights where people say, "Oh, I'm not drinking tonight. I'm just coming in to enjoy some food." And then I'm calling them a cab at 3:00 in the morning because they got shit housed.
Right. I believe you've done that for me, actually.
But I mean, I was pretty sure you weren't carrying a handgun too.
That's also very true.
And I know people who have, I mean, that's the way that I thought about it. Property rights are ultimate to me, as far as that goes.
Right. And
but if you want to carry a gun and come into my house, I don't care. But if you want to carry a gun and come to my restaurant where we're serving copious amounts of alcohol, I'm probably going to put a stop to that.
And that's fair. And again, you and I agree 100% on this. Like, it's your property. It's if I don't think that cities should ban smoking in restaurants. I think that should be up to the restaurant, to the owner of the restaurant, to say whether or not you can smoke in the bar. Totally okay if they're like, "No, you can't smoke in here." Fine by me. Like, even when I was a smoker, I would go to those places and I didn't care. I would smoke outside. I didn't care. But when they started banning it everywhere, that was when I started having an issue. I was like, why? You have no say in that. That is not your business.
Yeah. Let that restaurant close or die on the vine if they decide not to let smoking, or they make the wrong choice and their customer base wants smoking.
Exactly.
That's their call.
Exactly.
And I got so many hate mail, not even mail, hate cocktail napkins who had seen my debate or see us put the no gun sign on the door. I will never come back to this place again. Like, I honestly think this may have been your first and last time here anyway, but
right.
You and I choose to live by that, because I don't want to have. I've seen drunken fights. I've seen people passed out. People make bad choices. And if I could prevent a little bit of that bad choice in my small sphere of influence, that's great. If you want to do it in your house, I'm not going to tell you not to. You want to do it in your business, I'm not going to tell you not to.
No, exactly. I remember there's an annual party that happens in Nashville at Mafiosa's that it's always a good time. I would never go back since I stopped drinking, but every time I was there, it was a great time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all people we knew and liked. And the stuff that happened at that party was just insane. And
yeah, I couldn't imagine like a stranger walking in off the street about dealing with some of that stuff.
right, exactly. And a stranger coming in off the street dealing with that party and that stranger packing, I totally understand why you'd be like, no, you don't get a gun in here. Like, I get that. But again, that is your choice as a business owner, and it's not something that should be brought down upon you by the state.
Yeah.
I remember one night we had to throw some. You called me. You were like, "I need your help throwing this guy out of here," and I was like, "Let's do it. I'm hammered. Let's go."
Literally.
You and I helped get him out the door, and then TJ got him the rest of the way because that's what TJ did.
Hey, by the way, the socks are up, one another.
Cool. I was going to put that on this screen and give you updates, but I don't want to slow anything down. So I'm glad that you're doing that.
Yep.
So you recently left Nashville, and you moved out about an hour outside of Nashville, because Nashville had become just way, way too liberal, basically. Correct? Like, I'm trying to think of the best way to put that.
It's not, I mean, I saw things changing. It wasn't necessarily a liberal or conservative thing. It was, Nashville was not the old Nashville. And I don't even have the right to say old Nashville because I moved there in 95.
Right.
My wife was born and raised there. And, well, here's a perfect story. I remember when I first came to Tennessee, my wife looked at me coming from Boston.
Right.
She's like, if you honk your horn, people are going to follow you home and ask why you were so upset that you had to honk your horn. And that was even for like a little beep, beep. Hey, the light's green. Not a Boston,
Yeah. Not the blaring.
Wah, you hit it hard. So I took that into consideration and I tried not to honk, and I think I did a fairly good job. Over the past, more specifically, the past 5-6 years, with the influx of people moving from other places, Nashville has become not what I recognized. Never mind the things that don't have anything to do with liberal or conservative, the traffic, the property taxes going up sky high, the schools are awful, the public schools are awful, and just the congestion. I just got tired of it. We moved out here, and before we even back up, we bought an old farmhouse. We brought it down to the studs. But our first day out here, the house had been sitting vacant for about 4 months, and the yard looked awful. So I borrowed a lawnmower from a friend of ours who lived out here as well. And I was mowing with this 0-turn mower. I had never used one before. I'd never mowed this lawn and hit this. I was like, oh, there's a ditch, boom, and I got it stuck. And within 10 minutes of me trying to pull it out, getting it stuck, the neighbor from across the road had already come over. 2 guys had stopped as they were driving down the highway and said, hey, do you need some help? And that is what old Nashville was.
Right.
And it's not that way anymore.
No, it's not. So I left Nashville. Red Sox won the World Series in 2013. Yeah. I left that summer, 2013, because I came back to watch the Red Sox win the World Series in Nashville because I didn't know anybody down here. And in the time period from then until the last time I was up there in November, the city has completely changed. It's grown straight up. And I love innovation, and I get that big cities are going to attract people, and I get that you need to continue fixing the infrastructure. But with property taxes constantly going up, with them putting restrictions on Airbnbs, like the issue that you had with the place that I used to call my house, that wasn't my house, it was yours, and everything else, just from 2013 to now, it has become a completely different city. I still love the city. It's still my favorite city on the freaking planet. And most of my best friends from throughout my life all still live there or Nashville adjacent. But I don't know, I would never be able to move back to Nashville proper, because Nashville proper has just become such, they're just so involved in every aspect of your life now, it seems.
Yeah, yeah. They keep trying to pass big transit initiatives and those types of things. They're, multi-county, and the things that the thing they can't control is the property values going up so high, and it made no more sense for us to live in Nashville anymore. We had a big house. We thought we were going to have more kids. We didn't. We had one son who's 20 years old. Hey, Calvin, if you're watching. And we're like, we don't need this big house in the middle of Green Hills anymore.
Right.
So for 10% of what we sold that house in Green Hills, we bought 2 acres out here.
Right.
With a house on it. I mean, and we're 45 minutes, an hour away. With the coming change in technology, you're going to be able to work for that 45 minutes while you're in your car if you want to commute to Nashville.
Right. Exactly. Brandon Fuson is watching, and he said that's why he moved to Nolensville. What's up, Brandon? I have
Hey,
not.
Brandon.
I have not talked to Brandon in years. What's up, Brandon?
And what's funny is that's where Brad Ford is. I know a bunch of people who moved out there, and I know some people who moved out there 15 years ago who were like, "Oh, I'm out of here. This is getting too busy now," and they're looking for places south of me, down in like Linville, almost to Pulaski, almost to the border. And they're just like, it's too much.
Yeah, that's insane. Like I still need to be at least somewhat close to a big city, because I'm of the age that I am, and I'm still single. So I need to be somewhere where people are.
And there are no kava shops here in where I live in Lewisburg.
Not yet. And one day. Apparently they just opened one in Knoxville. One of my friends just told me. Now when you moved out to not Clarks, Lewisburg. I was like, Clarksville. No, still not.
Lewis and Clark. You're close there. You're right on the opposite end of that. Lewis and Clark, but
right. Yeah. When you moved out there, you rebuilt your house completely by yourself, right?
We had a friend, Bethany's friend from growing up childhood was a contractor, and he helped us out with a lot of it. But I weighed 35 more pounds than I do now, and we tore off the carport. We had to hand dig footers and the foundation, because there was no footer or foundation on the old part of the house that was built in the 1850s to 75. Nobody knows, because it was the courthouse burnt down in the War of Northern Aggression, as they call it here, and so nobody knows the exact timing of that. But it's an old house.
Right.
The 2x4s are still true. They're solid oak, old growth 2x4s. We saved every single scrap of wood that we could pull out of this place. We redid the trim on the doors and windows in the old part of the house with the old 1x6 poplars rough sawn that we pulled out. And it's been a lot of fun. I've learned how to do a lot of stuff. Before that, I just did a lot of woodworking, wood turning, a little bit of welding. We took some classes. I mean, here's the idea of Bethany's and my good time is, for our anniversary, we took a class on welding. And she's still married to me.
Yeah, that's. Oh, that's amazing. took a class on welding for an anniversary. Yeah. So when I was out there, you were showing me around, and you were showing me you were showing me the befores, and then you were letting me see what it looked like now. And it's like a completely different house. Like what you've been able to
Oh
accomplish.
yeah.
Like you kept, I believe, if I remember correctly, you kept the original hardwood floors, right?
We did. Wherever they were, we kept them. A few places we had to do some patching. The original hardwoods in the old part of the house were it's heart pine, about 4 inches wide, and it goes from one end of the room to the other. So it's not like a staggered board kind of thing. Beautiful, but it was in most parts of the house where they had it, it was either painted over and then carpet pad and carpet, or tar paper, carpet pad, carpet, or painted over, particle board, carpet pad, carpet, and then somebody let their dog crap all over it and pee in there and use it as their personal
Yeah, their litter box, their canine litter
that
box.
was the very first thing we did after mowing the front lawn was and me getting stuck was to rip up all that carpet and it was all built on the old part of the house. Current construction methods are different. 16-inch centers, 2x12s on your floor, or 2x10s on your floors, or 2x12s, depending upon what material you're using. And this, the old part of the house it's on 24-inch centers, and there's no subfloor. I mean, this pine in the old part of the house, you can actually feel it kind of. It's a little bouncy, and it's not tongue and groove, so they're not locked together. So you feel the boards kind of move and creak, and I like that old part. I like that part of in the old part of the house.
Right.
But that also means that we had to encapsulate the crawl space, and I didn't do that. We hired somebody for that.
Right. That's fair.
And I think he encapsulated a snake. He freaked out. There was a snake in the crawl space, and he had that foam gun going, and it was just like and just
covered it.
Just covered it. There was a horrible smell for about 3 months, and then it went away. I think it finally rotted out completely, and there's no more smell.
Wow. Sarah Branyan says you don't look old enough to have a 20-year-old. I can attest that he does have a 20-year-old, and you're right. He definitely doesn't look old enough to have a 20-year-old.
You should see my wife. People give me the tisk look because they think I'm robbing the cradle or something.
Right.
But yeah, my wife and I have been married for 22 years. No, it's been more than that. I want to get yelled at here in a minute, but she can't remember. We got married in '96. This year is going to be 23 in June. We met when I just turned 21 and she was 20, and we got married when we were 22 and 23. So I'm in my mid 40s, and I like to think it's all the good living I did that makes me look so good, but I think it's just genes.
Right. Yeah. When people ask me, when people who know how old I am ask me how I don't look that age, I go, oh, it's really simple. When you turn about 19 years old, cop the biggest drug habit you can possibly get, but you have to quit at the exact right time, because that like preserves the skin in a youthful glow. If you go too long, you just age rapidly and it's over. So you have to make sure you quit.
Automatically Steve Buscemi.
Right.
You're 27 looking like Steve Buscemi.
You're going to look like Keith Richards did at 25, who still looks like Keith Richards at 25.
Yeah.
So when you were out there, you were telling me last time I was out there that you were building an aquaponics system, which I had to look that up after I left. Because it was one of those things where I was like, I'm going to write that down on my hand and look that up on my drive home later. And so
my wife calls it nerd farming.
Right. Yeah, that's basically what that is. But it's
yeah.
But can you explain what that is to anybody who's watching me who doesn't know? And I may be the only ignorant person on that, because maybe everybody else has heard about it. But reading about it and then getting your description right before the show, so cool. Like, that is one of the coolest things you could possibly do in your own property.
Well, we love it because you can really you can get a lot out of a little bit of space. So on the surface, the most basic of that is we have fish that we're growing inside of a big tank, and we pump the water out of that tank with all of their fish poop and the food that they don't eat into other tanks, other grow beds. Some of them have lava rock in the bottom with a little bit of skinny rock on the bottom, like a little bit of pea gravel, so that we can plant things in it. And some of the beds that we have lava rock with real dirt on it. And that lava rock creates a place for bacteria to grow, and they take the fish poop, nitrite, and convert it into nitrates, and that is what feeds. It's like a fertilizer. It's a fertilization system for the plants. The plants grow great, and the more plants you have, the more fish you can have in there. You can have a higher stocking density. Right now, I think we have about 15 little bass in there, but our system is really new.
Right.
But
you were just getting it set up in November, so.
Yeah, and then I had the other part of that is it's all about community, and I learned this from some people that I've gotten to know really well, and we got together, and think of it like an Amish barn raising, and we have a group that we call Tennessee Get Shit Done Crew, and we're like-minded people. We listen to a couple podcasts, and we all met through and another podcast that we listen to, the Survival Podcast with Jack Spirko.
I actually lost you there for a second. You said we met through, and then you blanked, and then you said, and another podcast with Jack Spirko.
Oh, Nicole Williams,
okay.
who we used to work with at Spark Freedom. She
right.
has Living Free in Tennessee. And then the other person that we've kind of all met around is Jack Spirko with the Survival Podcast. And that we all are a little bit like-minded, and it's like, it's F the government, leave me alone, I'll do what I'm going to do, but let's create a community of our own. And it's not like we're going to go into the bottom of a bunker and eat a bunch of beans and rice. It's let's make our world a better place and prepare for that, just in case something goes wrong.
Right.
But you know what? We're making our world better, even if it doesn't go wrong. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. And we get together, and the great thing about that Get Shit Done crew is we'll pick a project. Somebody will be like, hey, I really need to have this done. So like, I've got 3 extra bedrooms, and I will feed you and supply you with a bunch of booze. And I've got some tent camping areas. So we'll have 10 people come over to the house, and we'll just knock out a project for a weekend. And you participate in one of those, and then you go to someone else's house and do that. And it just keeps popping around.
Right.
And everybody is helping everybody. You're creating that community of the people that you can kind of count on.
Yeah. And I mean, so that is sort of the way that I have, if I were to create an anarchist society, that's the sort of society that I would kind of picture, where you find the group of people that you can all work together, and you all work on projects together. And then that's the community in which you kind of you make that community flourish. If other people want to join, that's up to the people of the community. And then you just set aside different community. And then you just figure out how to trade with each individual community. Like, that's kind of the way I've always pictured my society.
And community doesn't have to be a physical location. I mean, Nicole just did her big workshop when I taught a class up there on how to cure meat to make bacon and stuff. And there are people coming from Missouri and New Hampshire and Texas and Oklahoma, North Carolina. Everybody met there for about 4 or 5 days to learn from one another and to have a good time.
Right.
So the community isn't necessarily a physical space. It's what you make of it.
Right. Completely off subject. You said something about smoking meat and making bacon, and I remember you took a trip to Alaska, and you were smoking. Was it what were you smoking in the back of Mafiosa's? That was so good that I definitely did not eat in the kitchen. Yeah, I don't really care. Yeah, I did.
I think we brought back some salmon from the Copperwood family,
Right.
and we were testing out new recipes for Ember Ski Lodge next door, and that was the smoked salmon. So
Okay.
smoked
Yeah.
salmon.
Okay. I was thinking it was salmon, but I'm getting it mixed up with my trip to Alaska where I was eating a lot of like elk and stuff, and I was like, did he bring that back? But
I brought that back, but I didn't share it with anybody.
yeah, that's fair. I don't blame you. It's really good. But yeah, no, you had the smoked salmon going in the back of Mafiosa's, and I definitely didn't eat it in the kitchen. But it was really good. My co-host Spike says, totally unrelated, would Brett and his wife like to come for a beach vacation in Myrtle Beach? I'm going to say that so you know which beach he's talking about. Maybe encapsulate our crawl space.
Only if there's lots of snakes in there for me to make it stink for about a month.
Right. The rest of the world's going to be rummaging through landfills for scraps of food, and Brett's going to be pairing bass with watercress.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So I remember when you first started getting into wood turning, you were just like, okay, this is something I'm going to do now. And you came into work one day. I believe it was a Sunday. It was a Sunday or a Saturday. I'm going to say Sunday. And you were like, yeah, so I just got this new lathe and I've been working on wood turning. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And you said, and I made you this. And you handed me a pen that you had made me.
Yeah, and I saw that the other day. That was a pretty shitty pen. I'm sorry.
I still have that pen, and I still use it all the time. It's in my bed.
Nice.
It's in my bedroom next to my
works.
bed, and that's what I write stuff down on at night, or write stuff down with at night. Is that pen, and every time that I'm like, Brett made me this pen. This pen is staying right here. It never leaves the house, nothing like that. But,
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah, and then you started the. It wasn't an Etsy store, I don't think, but it was some sort of store where I could buy like your pens and your bowls and everything that you were turning online, and I bought like every pen you had.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I hope that you get them all out.
What's that? You broke up for a second.
I hope you gave them all out.
No, I didn't. No, I still have all of them.
Ah.
I believe 3 of them are right here. 3 of them are right here. One of them is in the bag that I always carry with me, and then one of them that was always in my pocket recently got replaced. Sorry to say, but my buddy got me one of these bolt action pens for my birthday. Yeah. So I've recently switched pens from one of the ones that you made, but you know, this one breaks windows.
Time moves on.
Time moves on. This one breaks windows. So I'm a big fan. So living out there in not Clarksburg, Lewisburg. Living out there in Lewisburg. I know that you've got some crazy neighbors, according to things you've told me. But you've been told basically, like when you were remodeling your house, like you went to go get permits and they just kind of looked at you funny and were like, no, it's your house.
Well, what's funny was we thought that's the way it was. I went to go get, I was used to building in Nashville.
Right.
And we've built 4 restaurants and I've opened a total of 9 restaurants. So I'm used to having to deal with codes department.
Right.
And I've been to places where you had to get a permit to start demolition. So I went and said, hey, how do I get a demo permit? And they're like, you don't need a demo permit. I'm like, okay. But then when it came to, I asked the head of codes to come by and let him know I wanted to let him know what we were doing. And he seemed pretty cool. But the very first time that we got inspected, my contractor friend had a little argument with the very first inspector we had, and that just set the stage for us to um, to be unhappy.
Right.
So if I love the county, I love Lewisburg, I love the county I live in, Marshall County, but it is one of the toughest places I've ever had to deal with the codes department.
Really? Because yeah,
Yeah,
when you and I were talking about it, and you were like, "Yeah, we don't need a demo." You were talking about the demo permit, and I was like, "Oh, that's real different from Nashville." Because in Nashville, you need a permit for anything. Like you need a permit to
yeah,
braid hair in Nashville. I need
not anymore. Not anymore. That just changed.
did it. Good.
Yeah, well, actually, you can't just braid hair. Instead of getting a full-blown cosmetology license now, they have to make sure that you know how to wash your hands, and I think it's like a 20 or 30 hour thing instead of a 3,000 hour thing, which is still a load of shit, but it's a lot better.
Right. No. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, I remember I needed a permit to wait tables to know that I wouldn't overserve. Yeah, and granted, that permit lasts for 7 years or whatever it is. I don't know. It's been a while. That permit lasts for 7 years.
When I took it, it lasted for 2.
Oh, really?
It was only a 2-year class, and you had to sit through that 9-hour class. You can actually take it online now, which is fantastic.
That's better. I did not have that. I did not have the online option at the time, and I had to sit at some convention hall on a Saturday morning. And you remember me back then. Saturday mornings were not a good time for me, ever. Because
mornings,
yeah, mornings,
not just Saturday.
right?
Yeah.
Like just mornings in general. I mean, they still aren't a good time for me, and I'm sober. So back then, they were real difficult. I remember I was sitting in that class, and everything that this teacher was telling me about alcohol safety, anybody with a brain knew. And he was talking to us about finding fake IDs, which again, anybody with a brain is going to know how to do it. And he said, I'll never forget this. And he goes, "What's the largest organ on your body?" And I'm going to remind everybody who's listening, I used to drink a lot. So I raised my hand and he goes, "No, I already know your answer." So I just put my hand down because obviously.
Not my body, a body in general.
Right. And he goes, and he said, "It's your skin." And I said, "Oh." And he said, "That's why you don't want to bathe in alcohol." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, it soaks it in and it could kill you." And "Oh, what if it's just beer?" And he said, "No, don't do that." And I said, "Okay." And then I raised my hand again. He's like, "What?" And I said, "What if, and hear me out, what if you get one of those foot massager thingies and you fill it with vodka and you only put your feet in it?" And he went, I don't know if that would kill you, but I wouldn't recommend it. I am not going to say I recommend it, but
But you had an enjoyable time.
but if anybody out there tries it, it is not a bad time. Not that I recommend it, because it could be really dangerous, and I got lucky. And that is the one thing I remember from that class is he said, "Do not bathe in alcohol." And I said, "Man, if that ever comes up in a
Do
restaurant,
not bathe in alcohol.
yeah, if that ever comes up in my serving career, I think I have an issue."
Get out of the sink. Get
Right.
out of the sink.
Yeah. Why are you sitting in the sink for so long pouring alcohol over yourself? If you were doing that in your restaurant, you have been at work way too long, or you have a real drinking problem to just find yourself in that situation. But all in all, easy course if you have to take it, but just stupid that I needed to go sit in this class for that long in order to wait tables at Mafiosa's 12 South.
It's a time waste.
It is
It's a
such
time
a
waste.
time
And it's a shame that you have to take the whole class over again to renew.
Right.
It's not just like a refresher course. Like,
And then if you
can
did,
I slap you upside the head? Yeah.
and then if you didn't take if you didn't take the class again, they would come into your work and just do surprise stings, and anybody who didn't have that license had to go home. And I remember they did that to us on a Tuesday night. And
Oh, because I knew.
yeah, of course they knew. They did that to us on a Tuesday night. And for anybody who doesn't live in Nashville, which is going to be most of you, Tuesday night at Mafiosa's was 2-for-1 beer, double pour on liquor, and 2-for-1 slices of pizza. it was a busy night that made me hate everybody.
The young person's meat market night. Yeah.
Yes, I did enjoy that. But they came in one night and they sent half of the staff home. So I think we were down to like 6 servers running this Tuesday night. And,
usually running 10 to 17, depending upon the time of year.
right. And I remember me and Virginia, V, we were the 2 servers inside, just in a dead-on sprint all night long. And one of our tables was a table of regulars that came in mass and would take up half of a restaurant, who I'm not going to name here, but they were awful. They're always awful, and on that night, they were really awful. So if somebody wants to like start doing their own aquaponics, if somebody wants to start moving outward outside of the city, obviously the first step is to move outward outside of a city. But like, how do they disconnect from all of that? Like, how would you recommend somebody does all of that with the least amount of stress possible?
Well, you use the term disconnect, and I've got a problem with that. You need to connect. You need to connect with the people that you can learn from.
No, so disconnect from disconnect from the big city is what I meant. Like, get away from the big city.
Oh.
Yeah, not disconnect from people, but disconnect from the big city where we're used to everything being right there, having the
yeah. There's no Uber here. There's no Postmates. There's no Uber Eats. There's no Shipt or whatever the grocery store one is.
We don't have that
my grocery
here.
store. My grocery store options are Walmart and Kroger, and like a Food Lion or IGA or something. So plan on getting stuff once a week if you make a trip into the city. If you're close enough to still do that, we choose Wednesday to go into town because we know it's the quietest day, and we hit Trader Joe's. That's it. And hit the good liquor store to pick up good wine and stuff. Start growing your own stuff. And I have 4 restaurants. There are no restaurants here in town to speak of. There's a bunch of chains. It's like everything you'd see driving down any town street USA. You're going to hit each one of those chain restaurants.
Right.
There's a couple of little mom and pop places, but they're all meat and threes. And there's nothing like there's no place where there's like 15 Mexican restaurants, and a new one seems to open every week. There's no like little chef driven restaurant. Get used to that. So you're going to be cooking at home. Learn how to cook. Or if you're like I am, I started a service where people can order food that I'm going to prepare. They order I prepare 5 different types of meals a week. They order by Wednesday. I have ready for pickup on Friday. So it's kind of like a meal prep service.
Yeah, I was going to say, you got like a meal prep service going on.
And I found the stuff that sells are the stuff that people can't get here. I'll cook some Thai food or some Vietnamese or some Indian food. And that is the stuff that people just kind of, wow, I have to drive an hour to get this. Or I'm like, well, you don't have to do that here now anymore.
Right.
And it's in your fridge. You can heat it up when you want. But be prepared to be on your own, but not. Get to know your neighbors. And that's the whole reason you're moving out here. I mean, we lived in the middle of Green Hills. I knew the name of one neighbor. Lived there for 20 years.
Right.
Everybody in the city was so isolated, but because their kids go to different schools, they have different hours. I mean, here, you just, hey, you see somebody across the road and you go say hi.
Right.
And in Nashville, it didn't feel that way. It wasn't comfortable like that.
No, that's definitely true. When I was living in Nashville, I knew one neighbor at the 2 houses I lived in after I broke up with the girl that I had been dating when I first moved there. I lived in 2 houses. I knew one neighbor at each of those houses. No, one of those was 2. I forgot about Lou. I never considered him a neighbor. Because he just ended up just being always around. So he wasn't a neighbor. He was just Lou. Like I knew one neighbor at each of those places, and that was it. I did not get to know any other neighbor. Everybody I knew Every Spike says he loves you. Um,
Love you, Spike.
every everybody I knew I met through work, through going out to bars, through going out to different restaurants, or from the gym. Like that was it. That was my circle of influence. If you lived around me, I did not know who you were, and I was okay with that at the time.
I could see that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I learned out here was it's a much smaller pond, and you don't have to be a big fish, but you can have much more impact.
Right.
You know, we bought an old house that was a historical house in town, so people were wanting to see what the house looked like. People would come by all the time and just drive up while we're working on the house and ask us how we're doing and what we're doing and that kind of thing. And when it came to it, we were asked if we would put our house on the tour of homes for the Rotary fundraiser.
Right.
And that allowed us to meet a lot more people. And then it allowed me to join Rotary, which is it's a good organization. They gather money and they distribute it to, we have fundraisers and that kind of thing, and distribute it to other organizations, nonprofits, places that need it in town. And those are the types of things that I would prefer to government. Period. I mean, you're working with people. You can give money to people that you agree with their thing, what their mission is or what their project is.
Right.
And the other side of that is I'm getting to know the local government people. And if we all know there's anybody who can be more problematic, it's the local government, because the only thing they can do is make more restrictive laws than the ones that the federal government made, or the state or the county, and then you get down to town. And then get an HOA on top of that. So,
right. Which it seemed like that seemed like everywhere in Nashville, that was what you were dealing with. You were dealing with the restrictions on the federal, from the state, from the county, from the city. And then everywhere I lived, I think we had an HOA. So it was just restriction upon restriction upon restriction. Granted, I ignored most of them because who's really checking? But
yeah,
at the same time, I could have gotten busted for a lot of the stuff that I had done.
Yep. And out here, I hate to say it, but it's more about relationships. And that's, I think, I had relationships with different politicians and stuff in Nashville. Some good regulars at the restaurant who I think I'm talking about.
Right.
But out here it's a little different. It's not there's never any expected quid pro quo. It's just hey, how can I help you? I haven't come across any of that. Nobody with their hand out.
Right.
And the local politicians that I've run across seem to be fairly uncorrupt, and they're legitimately like, hey, welcome to town. What can we do? We were asked to go speak, to a couple of different organizations in town. People were basically like, what it boiled down to was like, why the hell did you come out here? Why did you choose Franklin, or why don't you live in East Nashville, or why didn't you stay in Nashville? And our answer was we wanted to be outside of that mess. We wanted the place where we could get to know people, and we wanted the place where we could be left alone if we wanted to.
And
that's it.
And
that's all anybody should want.
Yeah. I understand wanting to be immersed in like a city kind of environment. I get it. I absolutely get it, because that's how I sort of live. Right now I'm on like the outskirts of that. And this is Florida. So, if I go I have this option, or I have an option I definitely don't want. It's like
the swamps.
Right. Yeah. The swamps, the gator country. So I get it. I get wanting to be in the city environment. I also get wanting to get away from the city environment and wanting to leave that and just be with your neighbors and your families and all of that. I understand. I understand both sides of it. And I know that at some point in my life, I'm probably going to lean over to the other side and be like, okay, I just want to get away from all of this. The local governments here are starting to just piss me off beyond repair, where I'm tired of arguing at city council meetings, and I'm tired of fighting with people and writing op-eds for the local papers in order to try to get them to let me Airbnb a house that's not in a correctly zoned
Prescripted zoned.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is something we're dealing with here in this tiny little town that I live in out off of St. Petersburg. Like, if you're not zoned for business, you don't get to Airbnb your house. And then you also have to apply for a business license. And it's, to me, it's stupid. Like, it's my house. But so yeah, I definitely understand that. Normally I say at this point, do you have anything you want to plug? I don't really know if you're working on anything that you would want to plug.
Well, go to brettchef.com and buy some of my bowls.
Yes. BRETTCHEF.com. And real quick, like I said at the beginning, I'm going to give you like a heartfelt speech because I've been doing those recently. Literally, you are one of my favorite people in the world, and truly, I look at you. You're not a friend. You're not a friend. You're not like a former boss. You are family to me. You are a big brother. I look up to you immensely. And I can never show you all the gratitude for all that you have helped me out with. And one of those things, which I'll mention real quick, is when I left Florida, they threw me a going away party that I have never been to a party that was this wonderful ever in my life. We floated 2 kegs of beer, which I think there was like 15 of us there. So that was just impressive. And I couldn't even tell you how much liquor we went through. And I know I definitely didn't eat enough of the food because Brett is the most amazing cook in the world. Gordon Ramsay would disagree, but I mean, he really is. And
I learned to not yell like him anymore. That took me a while, but yeah.
Right. You probably still threaten people who eat in the kitchen. But you know, you and Bethany and Calvin, you're all my family, and it's weird because you're like my brother and she's like my sister, but you guys are married. But again, everything that you guys have ever done for me, I can never stop saying thank you. And I love all of you immensely. And as always, I'm always here for you. And I will once again say one day I'm going to make it back up there. I just really need everything to work out for once for me to get back up.
I understand that. We love you too. And we wish you the best of luck with this and keep it going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I'm definitely not moving back to Nashville proper. I'm going to go to that city outside.
Outside that, yes.
Yeah, that one city that we talked about last time I was up there.
Yep.
Yep, the one that's a country. I don't remember the name of it. But yeah.
I was just hanging out there today.
Were you? Nice. Yeah,
Yep.
No, I need to go and check that place out. But yeah, again, thank you. I love you more than you can possibly realize. You probably do because you know me. But yeah, I truly love you more than almost anybody else in the world, and I will always and forever consider you just one of my closest friends and my brother.
Well, Maddie, you are family, and I'm sure Bethany is watching this, sitting on the porch, and she's probably crying a bit right now. So
yeah, that was my goal.
We appreciate that. We love you, and let me know how I can help you anymore.
All right, will do. To everybody else, I love you. Thank you for watching. Please like, please share. But you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Muddied Waters of Freedom. You can find us on Instagram at Muddied Waters of Freedom. You can find us on Twitter at Muddied_Waters and on YouTube at youtube.com/Muddied Waters Media. And you can find this in every episode of Muddied Waters Media at muddiedwatersoffreedom.com. Can you hang out for a couple minutes while I do the closing song and then I'll talk to you after? Cool.
Sounds good.
Beautiful. Remember that we are closing out this week with Jason Lyon tomorrow night. This weekend, I have the wonderful pleasure of hanging out with all of the libertarians who are going to be in town for the Florida Libertarian Convention. And I will have many great pictures and stories from that. So look forward to that next week. Starting Monday, Jason Lyon is going to be starting us off. Next Tuesday, we have an all-new episode of Muddied Waters of Freedom. And Wednesday, I think, fingers crossed, that Spike Cohn is back with a brand new episode of My Fellow Americans. So tune in for all of that. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend. Do everything you can to make it beautiful, and we will see you soon.
I I am swinging from a 7-story window, throwing parties in a 10 by 7 cell. It's astounding the lengths I'll go to convince the whole damn world I don't need anybody's help. Yeah, I am waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. I'll try to use your body as a life raft, 'cause if there's room enough for one, there must be room enough for two. I'll sail the good ship you into the sunset, sipping on savory water till my liver turns blue. Sha-na-na, sha-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Is broadcast in the evening news. I will be relieved. La, 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 I am waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. I'm waving while I drown. Don't bother swimming out to save me, I will only drag you down. La, 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 singing, hey, hey, alright, yeah, I wrote that one myself. It's astounding the lengths I'll go to convince the whole damn world I don't need anybody's help.